The parent and sibling bonds that we share with our family members are hard to explain. The love and devotion we feel for those individuals is often unbreakable, even if they get on our nerves from time to time. But what happens when that bond is suddenly lost, or what if we never had it to begin with? Whether it's siblings meeting for the first time after an adoption, or parents reunited with their children after a kidnapping or sudden disappearance, there is something really special about a first meet or a sudden reunion. We've captured a handful of the best parent and sibling reunions, and they will bring you to tears. Reunited after her abandonment made headlines. Tammy Macram was abandoned by her birth mother at a young age. Her story made national headlines after she was wrapped in a blanket and left in a cardboard box on Christmas Eve in 1961. She was eventually adopted by a nice family who operated a farm in Minnesota. 27 years after she gave birth to her own son, Macram attempted to track down her birth mother. Macram lived a happy life with 3 other adopted children, but she had questions she wanted to be answered. It became part of my mission, I guess, to try to find my birth mother to tell her that things turned out great for me, she said. To hunt down her mom, Macram ordered a DNA kit from Ancestry.com and posted her results. That's when things took an unexpected turn. Another woman was in the middle of her own search and her DNA matched Tammy's. It turns out the 2 women were sisters. Liz Kellner was abandoned in a Minneapolis apartment building on December 30, 1965. The women then tracked down a 3rd sister, Abby Green, who was living in Florida. It turns out their mom had 4 children and their dad had 5. Sean Hornbeck reunited after kidnapping. 11-year-old Sean Hornbeck was riding his bike on October 6, 2002, when he was kidnapped by Michael Devlin. The man abused the child for more than a month, tying him to a futon and keeping duct tape over his mouth. Eventually, Sean was given more freedoms and was eventually allowed to go outside, but he never attempted to flee. In a moment of desperation, his parents went on the Montel Williams show, where a fraudulent psychic, Sylvia Brown, told them their son was dead. 4 years later, on January 8, 2007, Devlin abducted another boy, 13-year-old William Benanby. The second kidnapping led to a search for a van that police traced back to Devlin. Both Ben and Sean were reunited with their families. Devlin was given 74 consecutive life sentences. Twin sisters reunited after 10 years. Audrey Doering of Wisconsin and Gracie Rainsbury of Washington State were given up for adoption after being born in China. The twin sisters were quickly adopted by 2 different American families and started their lives apart from each other. When Audrey asked her parents for a sister for Christmas, she never could have expected her present to become a reality. The 2 little girls, now 10 years old, were reunited for the first time on Good Morning America. When Audrey heard the news, she was stunned. "I thought my parents were, like, playing a joke on me," she said. It turns out the girls share a lot of common interests, including the same taste in food. An accidental reunion. 13-year-old Dakota Zimmer was dropped off at a local pool in Washington when he met Isaac, a young boy who looked a lot like him. The boys were only 13 months apart in age, and their friends immediately noticed that they looked a lot alike. After the young men got into a squabble, their friends said they were fighting like brothers. While Isaac thought it was a crazy coincidence, Dakota knew it could be much more. Dakota quickly announced that he had a younger brother who was adopted by a woman named Dawn. "That's my mom's name," Isaac quickly proclaimed. Dawn had consulted with experts to determine the best time to tell her son about his adoption. Amazingly, the little boy was not upset when she finally revealed the truth. After the fact, Isaac was a smart little 10-year-old who noticed his adopted mother never said things such as "when I had you," something she often said about his sister. The day after the boys had met at the pool, Dawn called Dakota's grandma and legal guardian, Debbie Bay. The reunited brothers have been inseparable ever since. Adopted sisters meet in college writing class. When Leslie Parker gave birth nearly 35 years ago, she knew taking care of a child would be difficult. 1 year later, she gave birth to a second little girl. The struggling teen gave her children up for adoption. The elder daughter, Lizzie Valverde, grew up in New Jersey. Her second daughter, Katie Olson, grew up in Florida and Iowa. When girls were both around 30 years old, they moved to New York City and enrolled in Columbia University's School of General Studies. Without knowing that the other existed, they both enrolled in a literary reporting class. At the beginning of the class, Valverde was asked to talk about herself, and she explained that she was adopted and that she was from Florida. Olson immediately knew that the woman sitting across the room from her was her sister. The sisters quickly became close and even contacted their birth mother to let her know they were both doing well. These sisters ended up living 20 minutes away from each other. Amy Penland Demera and Catalina Jones were born in Romania and given up for adoption. The two women ended up living just 20 minutes apart in northeast Georgia. The women already shared part of their lives before they even knew they were related. They shared the same friends, and Jones attended the high school where Demera's father was a teacher. The two girls were raised in separate orphanages and adopted by two different families in the same state. After they discovered their relationship, they started to meet weekly to make up for lost time. Both women are married and have children of their own, making for a suddenly big family to share life's biggest moments with. Identical twins who lived identical lives. Jim Lewis and Jim Springer first met February 9, 1979. The two men had been separated for nearly 4 decades. Jim Lewis knew he was adopted and spent years searching for his long-lost brother. When they first met, Lewis described it as like looking into a mirror. The similarities didn't stop at their identical looks. Both men had childhood dogs named Toy. They both bit their nails and they were fretful sleepers. The men also both had migraines and married first wives named Linda and second wives named Betty. Lewis' first son was named James Allen. Springer named his James Allen. The men soon discovered they also took vacations to the same spot in Florida and went about their days in much the same way. Twins really are amazing. The sons of a Nazi camp survivor are united. The sons of a Nazi concentration camp survivor who both went on a journey to learn their father's story found each other instead. Peter Bischorner said he was overjoyed to meet the half-brother he didn't even know existed. Bischorner, 67, was searching for information about his Jewish father. It wasn't until he tracked his father into Britain that he learned of Klaus Müller, 76, his half-brother. Both men contacted the International Tracing Service in Switzerland and they soon learned that their father, Hans Bischorner, who was born in 1911, had a Polish father and Jewish mother and grew up in Eastern Germany. Hans fell in love with a woman, but the relationship was forbidden and she was forced to raise their child on her own. In 1941 he married a British girl, Joan Swan, who gave birth to Peter later that year. These long-lost brothers were neighbors. Two brothers in Newfoundland attempted to track each other down for years and soon discovered that they were actually living just feet away from each other. Tommy Larkin, 30, and his brother, Stephen Guzny, 29, were separated as children when they were adopted by different families. As they grew older, the two men started to look for their biological family but had no luck. They eventually turned to the Newfoundland and Labrador's Post-Adoption Services Agency and discovered that for nearly 2 years they were living almost directly across the street from each other. A kidnapped boy reunited with his mom thanks to Facebook. A woman who was separated from her 3-year-old son was reunited after 27 years, and it was all thanks to the social power of Facebook. Avril Grube last saw Gavin when his father took him on an outing to Blackpool Zoo in 1982. Joseph Paros took the boy to Budapest in defiance of a court order, and the pair vanished from authorities. When her sister, Beryl Wilson, typed the name Gavis Paros into Google, she found a link to Facebook which led to a profile for the kidnapped child, who was now a full-grown man. After a frustrating wait, it was verified that the 30-year-old father of 3, was in fact, the son of the grief-stricken woman. She was overjoyed to learn she had a daughter-in-law, Sylvia, and 3 grandchildren. The married couple who found each other after 60 years ago, Boris and Anna Kozlov, thought they were going to spend the rest of their lives together. 3 days after they were married, Boris was sent to war with the Red Army unit. By the time he returned, Anna and her family had been exiled to Siberia by order of a Stalin purge. 60 years after they were separated, a chance meeting brought them back together. "I thought my eyes were playing games on me," Anna said. "I saw this familiar-looking man approaching me, his eyes gazing at me. My heart jumped. I knew it was him. I was crying with joy." Boris was visiting his parents' grave when he saw Anna standing near her old home, the same home they would have lived in together. "I ran up to her and said, 'My darling, I've been waiting for you for so long.' My wife, my life," Boris revealed. A great-grandmother meets her brother after 78 years. A great-grandmother who was abandoned when she was a baby recently reunited with a brother she didn't know existed. Irene Adkins, 79, opened her front door to find Terry Spriggs, 73, standing in front of her. In 1932, William and Kate Spriggs abandoned Irene and their 3 other children in a caravan by the side of a road. Irene was soon played with a foster family and grew up completely unaware that she had any brothers and sisters. When her brother learned of their parents' abandonment, he set out to track down his biological siblings. His niece Sylvia Waters, 59, was the one who managed to track Irene down after building a comprehensive family tree. Irene said she was stunned when the brother she never knew she had turned up out of the blue. The siblings soon discovered that they crossed paths on various occasions and even enjoyed vacationing in the same places. A mother and daughter reunited after half a century. Jonelle Cook was pregnant in 1957 and at 22 years old, she knew supporting a baby on her own would be impossible. "People back then didn't keep children if they weren't married," Cook said. "I never considered abortion and just didn't think I could raise a child." After she gave birth, she took a nursing job and moved on with her life. 2 years later she met a man and they married in 1960. She never told her husband about the child she gave birth to, and for nearly half a century she lived with that pain. "I had 3 boys and I wanted a little girl so bad, and each time I had a boy I sat and cried because I felt it was my punishment for giving her up," said Cook. It wasn't until 54 years after she gave up her child that she received a phone call from a woman claiming to be her daughter. "I just hung up on her," Cook admitted. "It was such a shock. Then I prayed every day that she'd call back, and she did." 2 weeks later, it turns out that Susan Farrar had waited 10 years to make the call that would reunite her with a mother she had ever known. After they were reunited, Cook made a promise: "We have a lot of time to make up, so I've promised that I'll live another 20 years. Mom and son were under the same roof for months. Christine Talady delivered a baby boy in October 1985. As a young single mom, she ultimately knew it would be best to give him a better life with another family. Talady loved her son, so she left her adoption records open in case he ever wanted to contact her. Her son was soon adopted and named Steve. When he turned 18, he began to search for his biological mother. His search didn't turn up any results and he soon stopped looking. When he was 20 years old, Steve realized he was searching for Christine by using an incorrect spelling of her last name. He was working at Lowe's at the time of his new search and soon realized he had been working with his biological mother for months. He asked his boss if she knew someone with his mom's name, and she quickly directed him to a colleague who he had been working with. Mother reunited with kidnapped son. Nellie Reyes waited 41 years to meet Travis, the son who had been ripped from her life without her permission. Travis was stolen at birth and adopted by a family in Tacoma, Washington, who had no idea they had adopted a kidnapped child. Travis' parents told him from a young age that he was adopted, but the story ended there. After finally meeting his biological mother and realizing he was kidnapped, he said it was helping deal with his abandonment issues which had haunted him for a long time. The baby was stolen after a nurse told her Travis was born with a heart condition and not likely to survive. Hours later, she was told the baby had died. Reyes says she was never shown a body and was never given a death certificate. The truth of his story was only discovered after he took a DNA test and was matched to his biological mom. Her daughter just walked into the room 20 years ago. Slita Morgue gave birth to a little girl. She was going through a tough divorce at the time and was already struggling to raise the two daughters she was caring for. She realized her children deserved better and gave up her daughter in a closed adoption. 20 years after the adoption, a Florida girl named Natalie Rogers reached out to Leah. In a Facebook message she wrote, "I think I'm your daughter." They soon started to talk on the phone and shared pictures back and forth. She also connected with her biological brother, Zian, who suggested she come visit Leah on her 42nd birthday. The entire family worked in secret to connect the mother and her daughter. When Natalie arrived at the home, the pair burst into tears as the adopted daughter provided her biological mom with a scrapbook that shared pictures from her entire life. A mother-daughter reunion. After 83 years, Eileen Wagner was raped by a boy in her Green Bay neighborhood when she was growing up. It was 1932 and a being pregnant single teen was not socially acceptable. Her parents sent her to a home for pregnant girls and she was forced to give her child up for adoption. In those days, it was such an embarrassment, the 99-year-old told the Chicago Tribune. It was a lonesome time. 83 years after her child was adopted, she received a phone call. She was 99 years old when her daughter reached out. "Oh, Mother," said her daughter, 83-year-old Dorian Hamin. Wagner said she thought about her daughter every day for those 83 years. Her daughter was raised by a loving family and didn't see a need to connect. However, in the 1980s and 1990s, U.S. states started to reveal adoption records that helped reunite mothers who were forced to give up their children for adoption. After meeting, the women realized they had a lot in common and shared stories from their lives. It was a relief for Dorian to learn that her mother didn't want to give her up but was forced to because of societal pressures. Dumpster Baby reunites with her hero. Not every story on our list includes a sibling or parent. In October 1995, Morgan Hill was tied up in a trash bag and left to die in a back alley. Hoffman Estates, Illinois, dumpster. A male construction worker was walking by when he heard a baby crying. 20 years after she was rescued, she was able to meet with 66-year-old Gerald Rocky Hyatt. He didn't raise her but said he never stopped thinking about the baby he had saved years ago. Hyatt moved to Kentucky, but said, "A week of my life didn't go by that I didn't wonder about her." Hyatt said he was hesitant to look in the dumpster, fearing a wild animal would attack him. Hyatt wanted to adopt the baby on his own, but he traveled for work and couldn't give her a good home. Thankfully, Sandy Hill jumped to the child's aid and raised her. After reconnecting with the man who saved her life, Morgan said it was like reconnecting with a father. Navy siblings reunited after 30 years. Commander Cindy Murray and Chief Aviation Ordnanceman Robert Williamson both serve in the U.S. Navy, and they were separated for 30 years before they were reunited. The long-lost siblings recently came together at the Naval Medical Center San Diego. The siblings lost contact in Denver in the 1970s after their parents split and they went in opposite directions. Despite losing contact at a very young age, the siblings never stopped looking for each other. Little did they know, they had both enlisted in the U.S. Navy and were only located 320 miles away from each other. The siblings followed military protocol and greeted each other with a salute before breaking down into tears and hugging. With common names, social media searches didn't return any results and it took years for the siblings to reconnect. A teen jumps on a plane to reunite his little brother after living apart from his younger brother for a long time. A teenage boy surprised his little brother by flying home and sneaking into his own home. This wasn't a story of a long-lost reunion but rather a touching moment shared between siblings. Judging by the look on the young man's face, he was incredibly excited to see his older brother. The story of their unexpected reunion went viral and proved sibling love can't be stifled by things such as distance and age. What a touching and amazing story.